am so excited to talk to you today about one of the things I love more than anything. Actually, it's combining two of the things I love so much. So I used to teach forever and a day ago, and I taught language arts because I love reading and writing. So I used to use reading journals. Well, I did a whole thing on reading journals, and then I realized it might be easier for someone to do a reading journal at home if they had reading journal prompts. And then I thought, wow, we could go so much deeper and make those prompts so much more amazing if we leveled those prompts according to Bloom's taxonomy. So we're going to do 35 reading journal prompts according to Bloom's taxonomy to dive into deeper level thinking just for you. So let's go back just really quickly. Reading journals are a fantastic way to enhance a child's book experience. It encourages them to think critically, reflect, and engage with the text on a deeper level. So if you integrate the reading journal prompts, parents and educators can guide children to explore stories more thoroughly and thoughtfully rather than every single time they write in their reading journal, they do a word that they don't understand. Like they'll do a vocabulary word, or they would do this is what happened. So they do a summary. That's not a very exciting reading journal, and it isn't getting them very deep. So we're going to give you thought-provoking reading journal prompts that are really going to enrich your child's reading journey. So who is Bloom, and why does this encourage higher levels of critical thinking engagement? Well, it's all about levels. It seems like there's levels to everything. As a parent, you start out with a baby who can't do much of anything because you're a brand new parent, and frankly, you can't do much of anything. You haven't learned how to do much of anything. So when you get this little lump that all it does is need food, changing, and being held, that's the three things you got to remember, right? If they threw everything at you, like you also have to make sure it doesn't sneak out of its window at night, or you don't have to worry about the dating scene or all of the other stuff you'd have to worry about, friends, bullying, all these things, whether it's a cell phone. No, you only have to worry about three things because that's parent level number one. I would argue maybe parent level number one is owning a pet because then you can just do a rough draft. But Bloom's taxonomy is a hierarchical model developed by educational psychologist Benjamin Bloom in 1956. It categorizes cognitive skills into 6 levels: knowledge, comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. Now, if you Google Bloom's taxonomy, you're going to see that over the years, because 1956 was a whole long time ago, that they have altered them a little bit. The definitions or what the kids are learning at each stage are the same, but what they call them is different. So I believe the last level, evaluation or synthesis, one of those two, is now called creation or something like that, but you get the drift. His taxonomy is designed to promote higher order thinking by challenging students to not only recall or regurgitate information, but also to understand, apply, analyze, synthesize, and evaluate it. Learning absolutely thrills the heck out of me. Encouraging a child to level up and explore and expand their own boundaries of thought is beyond exciting. I know I get excited about the craziest stuff. So I created these reading journal prompts based on Bloom's taxonomy because children are encouraged to engage with texts on a deeper level, fostering critical thinking and a comprehensive understanding of the material. And you are able to see the difference between simply asking a question and promoting a thought. It's a huge difference. How should you use reading prompts? 1, create a reading workshop in your home or home classroom. 2, determine how often you expect your child to read and respond in their reading journals. 3, create a rubric of sorts that clearly states which kind of responses are expected and how often. I'll be talking about rubrics in depth in about a month, I think, but this rubric isn't going to be as detailed as the way I'm going to be talking about them in a month. Basically, I think say you say, I'm just totally throwing this out here. I think that a solid paragraph response once a week to one of the higher level questions is fabulous. The other responses can be quick 2 to 3 sentence statements about what is happening that is surprising, or what your child wants to remember, or what they did or did not like. 4, read the journal and responses to the prompts. Your child wants to know what you think of their observations. 5, designate a place in the reading journal for both reading responses and vocabulary that is new, difficult, or rarely used by your child. I do think reading journals can be used for vocabulary. I just don't think that reading responses should be vocabulary. So I think that you should have a separate space for vocabulary so that they can recognize that there are new words or not often used words, and they can incorporate that in other parts of their language lessons that they're doing. But that isn't their reading journal prompt. That's just an observation that they're growing in their reading. Because if they're not reading something and they're never learning new words, they need to level up their reading materials. So the levels of Bloom's taxonomy, and I'm going to tell you flat out, I cheated and I used AI for this because the AI definitions were just really great and really simple and easy to understand. Number 1, knowledge, remembering. The description, this is the foundational level where students recall facts, terms, basic concepts, and answers. It involves remembering information exactly as it was learned. It helps students process basic recall of information such as definitions, lists, and facts. It is essential for building a foundation upon which deeper understanding can be built. 2, comprehension, which is understanding. Description. At this level, students demonstrate an understanding of the material by explaining ideas or concepts. This goes beyond mere recall and involves grasping the meaning of the information. It helps students process interpretation, summarization, and explanation of ideas. Students can explain concepts in their own words and show they understand the underlying principles. 3, application, which is applying. Description. Application involves using information in new situations. Students take what they have learned and apply it to solve problems, carry out tasks, or relate it to their own experiences. This helps students process the practical use of knowledge. This level requires students to demonstrate how information can be applied to different contexts or problems, showing their ability to use whatever they've learned in real world scenarios. 4, analysis, which is analyzing. Description. Analysis involves breaking down information into parts to explore relationships, patterns, or connections. It requires understanding how parts relate to each other and the whole. Helps students process critical thinking, comparison, and contrast. Students learn to dissect information, evaluate evidence, and identify causes and motives, which deepens their understanding of how things work. 5, evaluation, which is evaluating. Description. This level involves making judgments based on standards and criteria. Students assess the value or effectiveness of information, ideas, or solutions. This helps students process critical appraisal and decision-making. Students learn to make informed judgments, defend opinions, and assess the credibility or significance of information. I would say that right now in today's world of fake news and what is true, what isn't true, this stage, which is again number 5, which is evaluation, I would say this is probably the most important level to make sure that our students are learning and understanding without emotionally based bias from the educator, whether it's the parent or teachers at school. 6, synthesis, which is creating. Description. Synthesis, now often referred to as creating, is the highest level of Bloom's taxonomy. It involves putting together information in a new way by combining elements into a new pattern or proposing alternative solutions. This helps students process creativity and innovation. Students synthesize information from various sources to create something new, whether it's a concept, a product, or a new understanding, demonstrating their ability to generate original ideas. It is important to note that a higher level in Bloom's taxonomy is not necessarily more difficult. We get so caught up in levels being you start at level A and you end at level B. Like if you go on a staircase, the first level is the first step and it's the lowest and the highest is there. Or if you start at A, that's like the lowest to get to Z. Or we are so stuck on our levels and the hierarchy of them. Bloom's taxonomy doesn't work that way. Yes, knowledge is the very first one and we recall it. That is a lower level. However, all of the other ones, all of these, it is possible to create higher level questions that are at a level that early or younger students can tackle. So it's not like only your 7th graders or 8th graders or, 12, 13, 14-year-olds can handle synthesis and evaluating and that kind of thing. That is not a true fact, and I want to emphasize that. Reading journal prompts according to Bloom's taxonomy. So here's these reading journal prompts, 35. Now, I came up with these, and you have to remember some of those levels in Bloom's taxonomy kind of go over into different areas, especially the one with the connections. There were 2 that you kind of have made connections. So I did the best I could here. So knowledge, number 1, write a book blurb that would appear on the back of the book that would entice readers to read it. 2, provide 3 facts about the last chapter you read. 3, list a character you met this chapter and a characteristic about them that identifies who they are. 4, what is the setting of the story? 5, who is your favorite character and why? 6, create a timeline of the key events in the story. Comprehension. Number 1, what are 2 questions you would ask the main character? 2, are there any themes or symbols that seem to keep coming up that you do not understand or wonder about? 3, what is the main conflict in the story and how is it resolved? 4, who is telling the story and why is it important to have the story told from their point of view? 5, explain why you think a character made a specific decision. 6, describe an important event from the book and why it is significant. Application. Number 1, what advice would you give one of the characters to change a certain outcome? 2, does the main conflict in the story remind you of anything that has happened in your life? 3, predict what will happen next based on what you have read thus far. 4, if you could have any character in the story, if you could be any character in the story, which one would you be? How would you handle their situation differently? 5, create a book cover that visually represents the theme, characters, and conflict in the book. 6, write a diary entry for one of the characters during a critical moment for them. Analysis. 1, compare and contrast 2 characters. 2, identify the turning point in the story and explain why it is the pivotal moment. 3, analyze the structure of the story. Did the author use foreshadowing or flashbacks or something like this? And was it effective or was it just frustrating and confusing? 4, what motive did the main character have for doing or behaving the way they did? 5, did the ending wrap up the story and the characters' situations in a way that you were satisfied as a reader? Why or why not? Evaluation. 1, are there any themes or symbols that the author is using that you do not understand or wonder about? And I think we had a similar question like that earlier. 2, how would this book be different if it was written 75 years ago? 3, write a new title. How does your title represent the book or story? 4, did the book impact you personally? 5, think of all the characters in the story. Which one is worthy of a sequel? And what would that sequel be about? Creating. 1, combine characters or a character from this story and characters or a character from another story to create a new story and tell me what that would be about. 2, illustrate your favorite scene in the book. 3, create a new beginning or ending that stays true to the characters. 4. Introduce a new character to the story. What role do they have and how do they affect the story? 5. Rewrite a scene from this story from another character's point of view. I would be curious how that changes the story. 6. Create a social media profile for a character. 7. Write a poem inspired by the book. It can be a spoof, it can be funny, it can be an ode to, it can be anything. Incorporating reading journal prompts into your child's literary routine can transform their reading experience from passive to active, fostering a deeper appreciation for literature. By using these 35 prompts, which were carefully crafted according to Bloom's taxonomy, children can develop their critical thinking skills, engage more meaningfully with texts, and explore stories from multiple perspectives. Encourage your child to start their reading journal today and watch as they grow into more thoughtful and reflective readers. The movie quote this week is, "A cover is not the book, so open it up and take a look. Because under the covers, one discovers that the king may be a crook." Chapter titles are like signs, and if you read between the lines, you'll find your first impression was mistook, for a cover is nice, but the cover is not the book. Mary Poppins in Mary Poppins Returns.